God bless Texas. I want to thank everyone for standing strong and gathering together despite the pandemic and the last minute changes. I wish we were in person. You know, I got to say, the RPT State Convention has been an incredible gathering. There's so many friends, there's so many patriots, there's so many warriors that gather every cycle together at the RPT. Today, we're spread out. We're spread out across the state. But what can't be diffused is our commitment to Texas. What can't be divided is our commitment to our country. We're at a critical juncture for our country. We're facing a worldwide pandemic, the Wuhan coronavirus, and an economic crisis that's resulted in over 44 million Americans losing their jobs. We've seen incredible unrest and division rise up all across the country following the horrific death of George Floyd. And we're in a crossroads. The future of our country and the American dream are very much at stake in 2020. We've never seen anything like this. In Texas, the stakes are especially high. Texas is the single biggest target for the left in 2020, politically speaking. There are 38 electoral votes at stake. There's a U.S. Senate seat at stake. And Texas is the key to national domination for years to come. If the Democrats win Texas, it's all over. And if we don't win Texas, we don't win the White House, we lose control of Washington, we lose the precious freedoms that Texans and all Americans that we believe in, such as the right to free speech, to peacefully express our views, such as the right to religious liberty, to practice religion free of government getting in the way, such as the Second Amendment, the right to protect yourself and your family and your home from harm. As we watch the horrible things unplaying, as we watch our country burn, those rights are even more precious and valuable. That's what this election is all about. And make no mistake, the Democrats and the liberal media, they're doing everything they can to take Texas. The last 5 Texas polls in a row have shown President Trump and Joe Biden in a virtual tie. This is a real race. And just 2 years ago, all of us saw what an all-out political assault looks like in my race against Beto O'Rourke. You know, that race was unlike anything Texas had ever seen before. Beto raised over $80 million. He outspent us 3-1. Now, what does that mean? You know, sometimes in politics, people say, well, money doesn't matter. Well, let me tell you what that meant in practical terms. Our campaign had 18 full-time paid campaign staffers. The O'Rourke campaign had 805. 18 versus 805. That's what we saw. It was the most expensive U.S. Senate race in hard money in the history of the United States of America. And what the Democrats did in 2018, it's a warning sign for 2020. They more than doubled Democratic turnout in the state of Texas. They took it from 1.8 million all the way up to 4 million. That was unprecedented. Now, thankfully, in 2018, we went on a statewide bus tour, a barnstorming tour. We did 50 rallies and town halls all over Texas, every part of Texas, East Texas to West Texas, the Panhandle down to the Valley, turning out voters. And despite the fact that Democrats had doubled their turnout to 4 million voters, we turned out 4.2 million Republicans. But that 0.2 was the entire margin. That's how close it was. Well, let me tell you right now, every one of those crazed, angry leftists who showed up in 2018, they're showing up in 2020, and they're even angrier. They hate President Trump, and far too many of them hate America. The left, it's not going to stop at anything to come after Texas and come after this country. And we've got 4 months to stop a blue wave from destroying the great state of Texas. The Democrats are right now targeting 8 congressional seats in the state of Texas. The Democratic money machine is pouring millions of dollars into our state right now to try to make sure Joe Biden goes to the White House, to make sure Nancy Pelosi keeps the speaker gavel, and to give Chuck Schumer a promotion to Senate Majority Leader. To fight off a blue wave, I'm fighting alongside President Trump, campaigning with him to win this race, and I've launched a program called 20 for 20 to support strong conservatives running for Congress here in Texas and all across the country, to try to take the gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hands to fight radical liberals like AOC and the rest of the squad. We've also got to support my colleague, John Cornyn, who is fighting as we speak to make sure that Texas stays red. Liberals know that if they defeat John Cornyn, Texas is the prize that's theirs for the taking. Can't let that happen. If we lose Texas, if we lose the Senate in 2020, all the ground that we've gained in the last 4 years can be lost. And you know, we've had incredible victories. The Republican Senate, working with President Trump, has confirmed over 200 federal judges, constitutionalists, to protect the Bill of Rights and our fundamental liberty, including 2 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. Together, we've worked hard to secure our southern border, to crack down on human trafficking and drug trafficking, to protect our Texas border and communities from drugs and gangs. We've taken a strong stand for free speech and had incredible victories defending religious liberty. And even as Beto O'Rourke, who's Joe Biden's hand-picked gun czar, and by the way, stop and think for a second. Biden, in looking across the country, said, who do I want to put in charge of guns? How about that guy Beto, who promised, as he put it, damn right we're going to take your AR-15s. Well, not in Texas, you're not. We've stood up for the Second Amendment. And we've got to keep standing up for the Second Amendment, especially at such an uncertain time when there's violence, when those rights are under assault. You know, everyone who's here, I think back to 2012, when I first ran for the Senate. Republican Party convention occurred between the primary and the runoff. I'd never been elected to anything. Last thing I was elected to had been student council. And we had just made the runoff. I was trailing by 10 points, but came into the RPT convention. And I got to say, the men and women gathered at this convention, today gathered virtually, they lifted our spirits. They encouraged us. They gave us the strength to come forward. And it was this RPT convention 8 years ago when we knew we were going to win. And thanks to you, we did win. We won the primary by 14 points. We won the general by 16 points. That's the power of the grassroots. That's the power of Republican women, and God bless the Republican women across the state of Texas. That's the power of Tea Party activists and young conservatives and grassroots activists. And we know the angry left is mad. They've unleashed the lunatic left that want to tear down George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant and Frederick Douglass. They're tearing down America. We can't let that happen. I want you to know that the work you're doing today and the next day and the next day between now and Election Day is going to have a lasting impact on which direction our country moves in November. You know, I recognize there are divisions, there are disagreements. That's part of the political process. It's a healthy part of the political process. But given the assault on free enterprise from the radical socialists, given the assault on America from the violent mobs, from the America-hating crazy left, now's a time when we need to come together and stand as one. We need to be unified. Let me close with a story. One of my favorite stories is from former Senator Phil Gramm, good friend of mine. Before he was in the Senate, he was a House member from Texas, and he was a conservative Democrat back when such a thing existed as conservative Democrats. And Phil in the House was trying to build support for President Reagan's tax cut. And he was gathering with other conservative Democrats from Texas, and he was urging them, come on, let's support the tax cut. It's the right thing to do for the people of Texas. It's going to produce jobs in Texas. And the analogy that Phil used is he said to the other members of Congress, the other conservative Democrats, he said, this is a moment, just like that moment in the Alamo, when Colonel Travis drew a line in the sand with his sword and asked those patriots, those Texans, to step across that line. He said, this is a moment like that where you choose whether you'll step across that line. And one of the other conservative Democrats said, Phil, everybody who stepped across that line, they died. And you know, Phil, without missing a beat, he said, you're right, they did. And you know what? Everyone who didn't step across that line, they died too. And nobody remembers their names. That's what the stakes are. Will you step across the line? Will you defend Texas? Will you defend the Constitution? Will you defend the Bill of Rights? Will you defend America? And you know what? I know that answer. You're patriots. And Heidi and I, we're so incredibly humbled. We're so grateful to stand with you. God bless Texas. And God bless the United States of America.